The owners' meetings are happening right now in Palm Beach, Florida. So what does that mean? What can we gather from the owners' meetings? What are the Vikings talking about? What do they want to do? Could the tush push really be banned? We're going to talk about all that and then some. And if we have time, another mock draft. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show, sponsored by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. Dave, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's been a busy day.
Yeah, just a little bit. A lot of stuff coming from the owners' meetings today, which, you know what? I'll take busy over boring any day of the week.
We'll have some of those days too, but we'll take busy.
Yeah, we'll take busy, especially when it's the end of March and I have a quota to hit. So we'll take that all day long. So a lot of stuff coming from the owners' meetings today, and we got to start at the beginning. More conversation, Dave, about JJ McCarthy in the future at quarterback. And I think we can kind of transition to this point. It's really not a big deal anymore, this whole conversation about McCarthy and Rodgers. And it's honestly just circling the wagons. I haven't seen it, but apparently Diane Rossini doubled down on Rodgers and the Vikings again today, which I'll have to go check out. Like, come on. At this point, you're just grasping at straws. And if somehow he ends up here, you can just victory lap that you were right. And honestly, no. The Vikings are not interested in signing him right now. The only reason why they might be interested if something happens. Teddy Bridgewater knee injury happens. Of course they'd be interested. They have a roster ready to win the Super Bowl right now. It's just, come on. Let's just be real about what this whole thing is. This is JJ McCarthy's team. They want him to win and earn the job. They believe that he is going to be the guy. And to me, that's the big thing. They want him to be the guy. And I'm going to pull up. I grabbed some quotes from earlier today.
Okay, but before you do that, set your mic, because your mic, we're hearing you off a different mic.
Oh. Okay.
Doc Proto, screen is too large, half of Tyler's head. Dave is in the large box. Well, that's interesting.
That's not what we see on our side, but I got my mic fixed. That's good.
It's fixed. Now you sound the golden tones of the Rode Procaster.
Yes, very, very much so. So let's have a conversation about some of the stuff with O'Connell. And I think this is an important piece of information that I don't believe we've gotten earlier, Dave. The Vikings did not reach out to Rodgers. Rodgers directly reached out to the Vikings. I know there's been kind of like, oh, Rodgers wants to go to the Vikings. I don't think anybody has explicitly said before that Rodgers contacted the Vikings. Is that right?
But it was never specifically said. Everybody assumed that was the case.
Yeah. So I thought that part was really interesting. And just kind of diving into some of the O'Connell discussion about him. Of course you're going to entertain a 4-time MVP potentially coming to you. I think the only team that wouldn't would be the New England Patriots, Tom Brady. Like, you don't entertain that. You have arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play football as your starter. You don't mess with that with like a 41-year-old. They thought about replacing him year after year after year, by drafting like day 2 and day 3 guys, be like, hey, we need to have a succession plan. We need to be ready for when that time comes. And then Brady just kept going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. And you know what? It worked because Tom Brady is just one of the more unique athletes to ever play any sport. He's just different. He's special. And
He's the unicorn.
Yeah. Rodgers, I don't think is quite on that level, but you at least entertain it. You at least listen. And the fact that Rodgers called, of course he wants to come here. Why wouldn't you want to? But it's less about Rodgers with this discussion than it is about JJ McCarthy. And I thought these quotes from O'Connell were really interesting. I kind of removed or like simplified the quotes a little bit, took out like extra fluff that we just didn't really need. So he says 2 things can be true at the same time. We took JJ 10th in the draft last year after a very extensive evaluation process. A lot of things we hoped to see from him, we saw in a short amount of time. Unfortunately, he got injured. I think JJ was able to take some of the things about of that last season, be ready to go for the spring. Second part that can be true is Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time NFL MVP, and he happened to be at a point in time in his career where he was free to have some real dialogue about his future might look like. And we happen to be one of those teams he reached out to. That's the first time I had heard that piece. I have a personal relationship with him going back to my playing days because remember, Rodgers was drafted in 05, O'Connell 07. Quarterback is kind of a fraternity. So 2 things can be true. Look, you guys know near and dear to my heart is the quarterback development process, but I do feel very strongly about where McCarthy, is at right now based upon the information we have, the evaluation process, the time we've had with him. I feel very good about projecting a really positive year for JJ. Now we've got to go to work and do it. They're all in on McCarthy. They were all in on McCarthy from the second they picked him. And they're not trying to get Aaron Rodgers. They're just not. And I know I've talked to some people in the YouTube comments, which, by the way, thank you for leaving your opinions on the show. Like, comment, subscribe. Please do all those fun things. Help us get to 6,000 by draft weekend. And I'm sick of talking about Aaron Rodgers too. But whenever talks about McCarthy or Rodgers pop up and they involve the Vikings, we would be remiss to not talk about it. And Daniel Foss says, Diana Rossini says it's her gut. Well, maybe she should get a probiotic and fix her gut.
I was about to say something like that, or an antacid or something.
Probiotics, perfect, because you got to rebuild the bacteria in there, man. I had to do that after my appendectomy. I got those little Yakult, like little yogurt drinks. I think they're Japanese. Oh, love those little things. I drink them all the time. I like to go to the Asia Mall. And for those of you that don't know, in Minnesota, it is actually called the Asia Mall. It's like an Asian grocery with like stuff from all different Asian countries. There's Korean stuff, there's Vietnamese, there's Thai, China, Japanese. It's a really, really cool spot. Plus they got like a hot pot restaurant and like some like fast casual spots where they're like a more real version of like what a Leanne Chin or Panda Express is. High recommend going to the Asian Mall. It's one of my favorite places. So many good snacks. Anyways, I can't remember why I mentioned the Asia Mall.
Because probiotic for Diana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should go get her some because I'm on my last one. I need to get some too. I used to be able to get them at Hy-Vee, but not anymore. They just stopped carrying them. It stunk. Anyways, you keep hearing O'Connell talk about this. You hear Kwesi Adofo-Mensah talk about this. At a certain point, maybe it's just the reality. And I know it might be boring for the national audience to hear, oh, they believe in their young quarterback. Well, it wouldn't be so boring if it was, I don't know, the New York Giants, the Chicago Bears. All of the talk is about their young quarterback, and they have the same win total as the Minnesota Vikings, which we may talk about. Because I think the win total for the Vikings needs some context, and it's still wrong. But sometimes betting markets aren't about being right per se. It's about also trying to entice bettors to bet the line. So there are different elements to this whole equation. Anyways, yeah, I'm not really concerned about this whole McCarthy thing, Dave. I think people just need to get over it.
Oh, and one of the interviews, KOC talked about it was the plan from the beginning.
Yeah.
And JJ McCarthy was part of that plan, and we are executing the plan. That, and Rodgers was not part of the plan, but due to respect, they entertained it and did their due diligence, which you'd hope they would do. And then I think we can pretty much put it to bed. Hopefully, barring some catastrophe to JJ McCarthy, it's put to bed. Now, it'll be officially put to bed if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, but it sounds like he's waiting and will wait and wait and wait. Probably closer to, training camp time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and this story will linger on and on until we see OTAs and JJ McCarthy just absolutely bombing it. And by bombing it, I mean hitting every pass available. Hitting Jets down the sideline, hitting Addison, hitting TJ McCarthy or TJ Hawkinson, and just on and on and on.
Yeah. It's exciting that McCarthy it feels like he's finally going to come around and be the guy. And I can't wait. I'm really, really excited for that possibility. I'm really excited for the future here. But I think what's even more exciting for me, Dave, is the what do you call it? Like this whole thing to just be done and the Vikings can just kind of move on. And I kind of want to loop this in here. I think we should have a brief conversation about the betting lines. And I know betting isn't for everybody, but Vegas betting lines give a good barometer of where you're viewed across like the world. Vegas isn't always right, but there's a reason why they are still in business. They're good at this. They have algorithms. It used to be just a dude with a notebook. Now they have like these built algorithms that can predict a lot. And they're pretty good. There's a reason why like if you do against the spread stuff, and like a good winning percentage is like 55%. It's hard. It's really hard to beat the books. So the Vikings sit with an 8.5 win total. That would be 8.5 is 5.5 less than what the Vikings had last year. And for context, the Lions are 4.5 less than last year with a 10.5 win total. So why do the Vikings have such a low win total? Why is it below the Lions and the Packers while being equal to the Bears? There's two reasons. One, it's a volatility of a first-year starting quarterback. You do not know what JJ McCarthy is going to be. And we've talked about this before. You can say, oh, I know he's going to be good. No, you don't. You believe he's going to be good. You think he's going to be good. You're projecting he's going to be good. You don't know for a stone cold fact because it has not happened yet. And to me, that's where this lies. There's too much volatility with bringing in a brand new starting quarterback, especially, Dave, a starting quarterback that has never played a single snap in a regular season game. There's volatility to that. Now, I believe McCarthy's going to be good. I believe that O'Connell's going to extract the best out of him, and the best out of him is going to be very good in the NFL. But we do not know for a fact that he is going to be very good. And that is a big part of why the win total is viewed so low. The roster is really good. The coaching is really good. The atmosphere on game days is really good. It's also not quite there yet as far as knowing what the quarterback is going to be. If this was a Sam Darnold-led team, it'd probably be closer to 10.5. Because Darnold, you've already seen it in action. You know what he can bring. You know what he can do. And that matters. Marzipan?
Well, you're very well right. And you got to remember when they set the lines, you said the world, but at least the whole nation. And those that across the nation that are looking at the Vikings only see, what they saw last year, which was nothing from JJ McCarthy. So they've got questions, and they're going to put their money that way, and the lines get set by where the money's going. Las Vegas likes to split 50-50 where the money's going, and that's where it came out is 8.5. Now, we take into a fact that KOC and crew are going to be coaching him. You got an experienced Pro Bowl center who's going to mentor him from that angle. You've got weapons of, up the wazoo. We see he is set up for success. The best way I think any young quarterback could be. Caleb Williams wasn't set up for success, and he struggled. So I think 8.5's low. I'd bet the over, but hey, that's me. And KOC even mentioned, that he is there every day. He's throwing. He's working the plan, the whole stuff. Now, which makes me wonder, because coaches can't be in the same space as the players when the players are out during the off-season workout because the players' union's agreement. But it's going to be interesting when they hit the field and he can actually show that, which will, the first part of OTAs is just workouts. And then I don't think you get it to the second part where it's walkthroughs and, that sort of stuff. It's a build-up process. But, hey, Giotano says 8.5 with a QB who's never played downright is actually a high number. And it speaks of KOC's respect. I agree with you, buddy. I agree.
I will say with what he's saying there, the Vikings also have an elite roster compared to a lot of teams that are starting first-year quarterbacks. That matters too. I do want to point out Brian Simmons mentions Tyler's not a believer. Get that boy some Kool-Aid. I'm not paid to spout homer opinions. I'm paid to be honest and objective. Like that's why I'm here, and I believe that's why you guys come here too. I'm going to tell you what I believe, and you know what? If I believe that he's just going to run away with it, I'm going to tell you that, but it's still not a guarantee. It just isn't. So trust me, there's still plenty of Kool-Aid, but I am paid to be as reasoned as possible, and that's why. Sometimes I don't come across like a big fanboy, but let me tell you, I've been a Vikings fan for 30 years. Mm-hmm. I love this team. There's a reason why I cover this team. I love this team.
Mm-hmm. Daniel said, people say JJ McCarthy is a competitor and a workaholic. And one of those people is Jim Harbaugh in particular. And he's been saying a bunch of glorious things about JJ McCarthy, even at the owners' meeting, which makes me think he's still got a desire to have him on the Chargers. But
of course he does. It won't happen, at least not for a while. So I have the quote pulled up because I was going to talk about it. Chris is also right. I do drink Busch Light, but grape Kool-Aid rules. I love grape Kool-Aid. But we don't keep it in the house. We try to keep the sugary drinks to beer. Quote, it's a great situation, talking about McCarthy at the Vikings. And I just know JJ, he's going to be every day, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. He'll get in there and he'll attack. He's an elite competitor and a highly talented individual. I know we're going to have to play against him. That's probably the second thought. I know what it's going to look like. Look, Harbaugh was very vocal, Dave, about wanting to, believing that JJ McCarthy was the number one quarterback in last year's draft. He was vocal about it. But, he can be vocal about it. He's got a top 5 quarterback in the league in Justin Herbert. So once they kind of build up the infrastructure around Herbert with consistent weapons and a defense that's not 90 years old, like the Vikings are getting dangerously close to having a really old defense too, they're going to be a formidable opponent. And Harbaugh has had a massive amount of success everywhere he goes. And that matters too. So I'm really intrigued to see how that works, what that looks like. And I think that they can be really, really good long term.
Now, that division of head coaches, all of them have been to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
All but one won it.
The only one that didn't was Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild to think about. And you know what? Harbaugh was about 6 inches away. If Kaepernick just hits Michael Crabtree, 6 inches, that's all it would have taken. That was one of the more interesting Super Bowls. Fun story about that. My buddy bought a brand new TV that afternoon. We bring it upstairs. We set it up. And he forgot to mess with his cable box, and we watched the whole game in standard definition and watched the post game in high def. 55-inch TV, brand new, top of the line. Watch the game on standard definition. You can't make it up.
Hey,
but
you'll live and learn.
Hey, you know what? I think it's very funny still to this day. So there's a couple other things that I find interesting. Kind of circle back to the McCarthy thing. O'Connell was vocal about the fact that he talked to McCarthy about this. He kept McCarthy in the loop the entire time. That's a big deal. And it goes back to last year's NFL draft cycle where Kevin O'Connell sat down with Sam Darnold the morning of the draft to say, hey, I know you pretty much already know this, but we're going to confirm it to you. We are taking a quarterback. Basically the goal was, we're going to get you paid somewhere else. You're going to have a full year here. You're going to go in as the starter, but we're going to focus on developing our quarterback and continue developing you and getting you paid somewhere else. And they did. Sam Darnold got paid more than Baker Mayfield by $166,000 a year, but it's still more. Mm-hmm. And that is an important factor. Kevin O'Connell has a history of communicating with his players and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. We want you to know. We want you to be in the loop. That's a great thing. It's a great thing. You want that kind of dialogue with your people. You want to have those positive conversations. And you know what? They're doing a great job of it. Having those conversations with him is huge because he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to lose confidence because you're having a conversation with Aaron Rodgers. But you never know. Like, he's 21 years old. When I was 21 years old, I might have gotten stressed out about something like that. Like, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So by reaching out and having those conversations shows a level of respect, shows a level of commitment, and it just shows why this organization is above everyone else. And that was something that Mark Wilf talked about as he made the rounds today, as Marzipan is just running around like a crazy puppy. He was very proud of the fact that the Vikings were in that position and they wanted to put themselves in a spot to be a true destination. And you have things like that. You have things like the NFLPA scorecard, where they finished first, second, and second in all 3 years of the actual survey that the NFLPA conducts. Those things matter, and the Vikings are in such a great spot moving forward. I'm really excited about it. You guys should all be really excited about it. This is a really, really good football team,
and it attracts players. And one thing that Mark said was because of the culture that the whole group is making, whether it be Kwesi and KOC and all that, and players wanting to be there, and the whole taking care of families and all this, it gives them an advantage, which I think is wonderful. Because I remember Winter Park, and Winter Park was a dump, basically. And it got worse under Red McCombs. And it was, but the league learns and it's growing. Miami is the one that finished first above us. And the only reason they did is their meals staff or meals were better. I say it's because they got local seafood, but it's raising the whole NFL, the standards in the whole NFL. When Kraft from New England, owner of New England, built the stadium at Gillette Stadium, it was a top of the line place. Well, it quickly got overcome, and now he's got to build more stuff so he can compete, because right now he ranks like 31st. Well, he's in the process of doing that. Well, hey, billionaires, go ahead, do that. It makes sense if you want to win in this league that you attract the best talent, and having a good culture and good facilities, it makes that the case.
Yeah.
Now,
And especially when you're
state taxes, that would help too, but that's a whole other story.
They're already there. It's never going to happen. But I'll tell you this, Dave, the Vikings are in a great spot, and you have to have great facilities. You can get away without great facilities if you're in a place like Miami. You can't do that in Minnesota because you have cold weather. You have to convince people to want to be here in the winter. It's not that convincing. Just ask my wife. It is not convincing at all. But speaking of, I want to shout out Brian, who makes another good point in the chat. Grape Crush. Yes, I had a Grape Crush earlier today. And you know what else you can crush, Dave? You can crush your lineups at Underdog Fantasy. One of the reasons why we partnered with these guys is because it is a lot of fun. And with baseball season coming up, baseball gets really monotonous. It is 162 days of grind. And the Twins are already 0-4. And let me tell you, a little stinky. But you can always have fun watching the games by putting together a lineup. Just 2 to 8 different players, over or under different totals, and then reap the benefits. And if you use the promo code FORNO upon sign up, FORNO, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus credits on your first deposit. And it's available across the country in the majority of states across the United States of America. And it's a lot of fun. It's a way to keep being involved in every single game, even if you don't have a rooting interest. And that is Underdog Fantasy. And if you have an issue, just take a look at the screen, 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit ncpgambling.org. It's entertainment. Use it as such. And if you do, Underdog is a great place to do it.
Entertainment, unlike the Twins, so far.
Well, that's how you got to watch Twins games. You got to play Underdog. It's the best way to do it. Now, Dave, there's a couple other things, and then I want to get to a mock draft simulation before we go, because as most of you know, some of you guys might not know, this show originally started as Mock Draft Mondays, and it evolved with a couple other co-hosts, and then it became the Real Forno Show. Oddly enough, Dave, 3 years ago, Friday, it officially became the Real Forno Show. So I didn't mention it on Friday, but that was our 3-year anniversary as this show. I thought that was pretty cool. We started during the 2022 NFL draft with this being the Real Forno Show, and now we're stronger than ever. And it's really, really exciting. There's a couple other things that are interesting. Mark Wilf talked. He didn't just talk about the fact that they had a really, really good survey. He also talked about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's contract. And Kwesi talked about it last week during his press conference. He's not really worried about it, and it probably would have been done quicker if he, had actually cared about it. And the reason why I kind of frame it that way is it's not that he doesn't want to be extended. He's just so focused on this team and taking it to the next level and doing the right things to build this team. And that is where all of his brain energy is going, which you got to respect that. He's trying so hard to get this team in the right direction to win a Super Bowl, which, let's be honest, if this team wins a Super Bowl, people will want a statue of everybody on that team in that building out front US Bank Stadium. They won't care because you know what? It happened. You got a Super Bowl. I would just prefer to not have it with Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. That would be less fun. But this is what Mark Wilf had to say about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. And it was very interesting when you talk about like his contract status. He said that's something we're going to continue to work towards this offseason. And we've had very, very positive conversations. And when directly asked if it's something that he wants to get done, yes, it is. And he also kind of confirmed some suspicions because there were people who had suspicions, Dave, about the Minnesota Vikings power structure. And this was really led by Mike Florio's brain, which is very, very interesting. I respect Mike Florio a lot because he looks at things from a different perspective. And I will always be biased towards Mike Florio, I'll be honest, because he did something incredibly nice for me after I had my life-saving surgery. And I'll forever be grateful for his kindness. So I will, to a point, I will defend him till the end of the earth. Everybody has those people. He's one of mine. But he started speculating, Kevin got his extension, but Kwesi didn't get his. So is Kevin, and then all this stuff about Kevin O'Connell kind of gets final say about quarterbacks. Well, does Kevin now have more power than Kwesi Adofo-Mensah? Doesn't seem to be the case, according to Mark Wilf. And his quote, no, I think it'll work pretty much the way we've been doing it. And again, I can't think of even one time where we haven't been able to work through and develop a consensus. But I think the process and decision-making tree that you guys sometimes focus on is not going to change, which to me says that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah still has football control. He is going to be the guy. He's going to make the decisions. And we keep saying, Kevin O'Connell deserves all the credit for this. Brian Flores deserves all the credit for that. The guy pulling the trigger gets the blame if there's a murder. The guy who makes the draft picks, who initiates the contracts, that's the guy who gets the credit. He's also the guy who gets the blame. You can't just pigeonhole and say, no, Kevin O'Connell gets all this credit, but Kwesi Adofo-Mensah gets all this blame. No, Kwesi gets the credit. He also gets the blame. And something in the world of pro wrestling, Tony Khan, who owns and operates AEW, he's also like his dad owns the Jaguars, and he's a big part of that front office. He says, look, it starts and stops with me. I get the blame, but I also get all the credit. You can't have it differently. I get the blame, I get the credit. The buck stops with me. How this company goes, I get what comes to me. And I think that's a really good point. It's not being selfish, and he praises plenty of other people, but the success of the overall company is due to Tony Khan. The success of this overall organization on-field product is due to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. He hired Kevin O'Connell. He drafted JJ McCarthy. He drafted Jordan Addison. He signed Jonathan Grenard. There are other people that are helping. But at the end of the day, the person who gets all the credit and all the blame is the guy at the top. The guy who's enacting these decisions. Like the president is the commander-in-chief. They get the credit. They get the blame. There are other people under them. But at the end of the day, they have all the control. They have all the power over the United States military. And Dave, I see you nodding your head. It's the same thing across the board. CEOs. All the stuff with Boeing a couple years ago. The CEO got all the blame for that, as he should.
And it got
you
fired.
get all the blame, credit. Yep. All the blame, all the credit. And that's where Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is. And look, I think for a lot of different reasons, he gets way too much blame. And I think it's for reasons that don't have to do with football. I also think it's because he's an analytics guy. He's not Rick Spielman. He's very different. That factors into these discussions. But I'll say this. I think the Vikings have a really good one. And I think that he has his flaws. One of them has been he's been less than ideal in the draft. But if he hits on both Dallas Turner and JJ McCarthy, which you can argue the trend line is pointing up.
If he hits on JJ McCarthy, that should do it.
But if he hits on JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner, 3 of his first 4 first-round picks, all hits, that's better than average. You expect to hit you should hit on every first-round pick, theoretically. Odds are you hit on 1 out of every 2. Every other. You hit on every other, you're still doing pretty solid. You hit on 3 of 4, you're doing great.
And the Wilfs are happy with him. And that's, Darren and I talked about it this weekend. Somebody said, well, he doesn't draft well, and I wouldn't give him an extension. I said, well, it's up to who is he fulfilling his job requirements. The Wilfs, is he making his bosses happy? The Wilfs said, we hired you to do this, this, and this. Are you doing this, this, and this? And if he is, and he's doing it successfully, they're going to be happy, and he's going to get the extension.
Yeah.
And that is what, Mark was quite explicit. I watched the interview. He expects it to get done. They want to extend him. Which tells me it's Kwesi's agent and, doing numbers things. But they want to extend him. And it will happen. It's just a matter of timing now.
It is.
When will they agree on the final, number and dot the I's and cross the T's? And then we're going to hear a, nice little press conference, nice little blurb. Not even press conference. It'll probably be just a media statement that he's agreed to an extension. And we'll move on.
Yeah. I would expect that to come right after they do the whole UDFA process. That's my read on it. It would also rule to just have it done before the draft so people can, calm down about it, but we'll find out. Couple other things. Potential joint practices at TCO with the Rams and the Patriots. This will theoretically be, if these get approved, because they have to be approved by the NFL, the 5th and 6th joint practices that the Minnesota Vikings will have under Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. These are arguably more important than the games themselves, and they've used them to their advantage. Now, I found really interesting why Mike Vrabel talked about earlier today, why he wants to have joint practices with the Vikings. They have phenomenal facilities. We were there in, I believe it was 2023. Yep. And he also referenced cheese curds. That's a man after my own heart. I wrote about it earlier today, and I'll tell you this. When you live in the Midwest, and anywhere in the country, you just kind of become normal to you. Cheese curds are an appetizer on almost every bar menu across the state, especially in Wisconsin.
Hey, so here in Texas.
Yeah, you go to a bar, there's mozzarella sticks, cheese curds, chips and queso, a lot of times fried pickles. There's some pretty staple stuff on there, right? Go down south, very few places have cheese curds. I look at the appetizer menu, I'm like, why are there cheese curds? And I had somebody who wasn't from the Midwest, like, what? Like, yeah, they're on like every bar appetizer menu. So it's one of those interesting things. You can't get them everywhere. And apparently you can't get them in New England like you can here, but you get fresh seafood. Hell yeah. Give me a cold rock lobster tail. Like, that's good enough for me. So I thought that phrasing was interesting. Plus, Sean McVay coming here. Him and Kevin O'Connell have a history. That's very interesting. So look for that to get announced sometime soon. Maybe it's not till after the schedule release, but
it's going to be tied with the schedule release because it's going to be the week we play those teams in the preseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Bulldog LLC mentions River Falls with the Chiefs. They used to have joint practices every year. Then Tyler Thigpen got stolen after he was a 7th round pick out of Coastal Carolina. And the Vikings really believed that he could, develop into something. So did the Chiefs because they saw him in joint practices, and that kind of ruined that relationship. The Chiefs don't practice in River Falls anymore. They are in Missouri, I believe. Like, very few teams will travel out of state nowadays. Like New York, New Jersey, like that's really not out of state. But like the Dallas Cowboys go to Oxnard, California, and they have for years. So though, like that still does exist, but the Chiefs are close by in Missouri. They're not driving up to River Falls anymore. So that's something to keep an eye on over time. But I want to talk about the rule changes announced. We'll kind of just blitz through them. I saw Northfield had a question about Kymer DK. We'll talk about that when we do our mock draft. So there are 5 rule changes proposed. One of them is by Green Bay, banning the tush push. Stop the tush push. That's my challenge to everybody. Stop it. Don't ban it. Stop it. You're cowards.
There's a bunch of coaches that are coming out and say, hey, are we going to ban everything if they're good at it? You know, it's not fair.
Mm-hmm. Defensive penalties, the Detroit Lions, which is very interesting because they are very bad at this. They get a lot of penalties. Eliminate automatic first down for defensive holding and illegal contact. I'm going to be honest. I've thought that it should be that way for a while. And when I was a kid, I never understood why a 5-yard holding penalty could give you a first down on 3rd and 15. I always thought that was kind of dumb, but it's just funny that the Lions are the ones mentioning it. Overtime rules for the Philadelphia Eagles are proposing to align postseason and regular season overtime. Both teams get possession in a 15-minute period. They may not do the 15-minute period again because they wanted less playing time for the players. I think that was a concession with the 17th game ad, and now they're already talking about an 18th game. The competition committee has recommended to expand replay to advise on specific objective aspects with clear video evidence. So basically, you can call a penalty. Or I think it's not called a penalty. I think you can just eliminate a penalty if you see that it was clear and obvious that it did not occur. Maybe they'll be able to call a penalty later. I think I have that right. If I don't, please correct me in the chat. And then there was the free kick play also by the competition committee to make the free kick from last year permanent, but move the touchback to the 35-yard line. Onside kick anytime when trailing, not just the fourth quarter, which would be good for like those really big blowout games where you're still down 3 scores at the end of the third. But the Lions introduced one that was really interesting that we haven't mentioned yet. Non-division winners can still host a playoff game if they have a good enough record. And the Lions did not get screwed by this. Technically, the Vikings did. I've always been in the camp where I like the fact that the division winners get something for winning their division. I think it should be reseeded after the wild card round. So if the Vikings win, but they have the second best record, they should then become the number 2 seed after the first round. Then it gets them a home playoff game. I think you should get something for winning your division. I think that's important. And you know what? That's not going to be for everybody. You're going to have people who disagree with that, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But that's just kind of how I feel about it. I think you should get something for it. And you know what? It would have benefited the Vikings if it were opposite. But I do think that the Vikings didn't deserve to host a playoff game because they did not win their division. Does that suck? Yes. But just because it happened to the Vikings doesn't mean I'm going to change my opinion on it.
I agree. I've argued that the division should mean something. And I've argued that the only way you change it is if you lose the division, you lose 100+ years of history, and you turn into baseball and the NBA, where it's East versus West or whatever that they got it, national versus American. And if you're going to do that, then don't play your division teams twice a year. Play them once. Add the third additional division, so you have all 4 divisions, and then play the other 2 or 3 games against the, in our case would be the AFC. And then that would be more equal. But you lose out on the traditions and the rivalries that were and have been, ingrained for generations. I do the Wednesday show, Who Will Be King, with the NFC North. And it is intense. We give each other grief. We banter back and forth. But our hatred for the team in the middle is there. And and it's because there's so much history between Chicago and Green Bay. And then Detroit came along, and Detroit was good up into the 50s. And then the Vikings came along in the 60s and dominated for a while. And those rivalries And especially with the Vikings, because before the Vikings, they had a choice. People in Minnesota was Green Bay or Chicago. Then they, and there's families that are split. All that means something, and it should mean something, and it should stay that way. My idea is just leave it alone. But if you have to change something, do it after the wild card round. Then you can reseed it.
Yeah.
Because the schedules aren't fair. We played, the AFC South last year, and that was a joke.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they adjust the algorithm if they end up doing a 18-game schedule, if they do that. Because what they did was they added they added teams. Like, my brain is so fried. So what they did was you play a full division in the AFC, and then you play one team from the division you played 2 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that matters. I think having that extra game. So this year, that game for the Vikings, who was it? They played the AFC South. Oh, it was the Jets. This year, I think it's the Chargers. And I think they play him at home. So it'll be interesting. JJ McCarthy against Jim Harbaugh. But the Vikings are likely to vote against that measure that the Lions put up, believing that, hey, you should have to win your division, which I agree with. Speaking of agreeing with, everybody will agree that this mock draft that I'm about to do is wonderful. Nobody will hate it, and it is a very good mock draft. There is nothing wrong with this mock draft. It will only be good. You will all love it. I will get only praise for it. I know that's a bunch of hogwash, but we're going to do it anyway. Let's have some fun. Dave, fire up the mock draft machine, will you?
Will do. Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice?
All right.
Here we are.
Shout out to Anthony in the chat. I already hated Forno. We're back. Let's go. That's perfect. Let's have some fun. Let's do a mock draft. 7 rounds. We might trade. Have not decided if I want to go that route yet, but we'll keep it relatively short because it is already 6:55. You guys have been with us almost an hour. We are grateful for that every single Monday and Wednesday, which post NFL draft, we may be moving the Wednesday show to Thursday. So something to be mindful of. I'll kind of plant that in your brains here now. All right. So we've got Malachi Starks, Luther Burden, James Pierce. Is that Kenneth Grant?
It is.
Walter Nolan, Amari Hampton. Okay, so one thing that I have found, because I've done a lot of research on this, the Vikings have been very selective on who they take in the first round. Right. And has it worked? No, hasn't always worked, but they have made things work. And they've done a really good job of kind of dialing in. So we have a very small sample. And if you need more information on this, go check out the SKOL Search episode we did on Friday, talking about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's process in the first round. I also wrote like 1,300 words on it because I'm an absolute sicko degenerate. I love this kind of stuff. So I identified 9 players that I think the Vikings would realistically be interested in based on all factors involved, including they have to be there. I think they'd be very interested in Shamar Stewart. I don't think he'll be there. I think he's gone in the top 10. So Alabama inside linebacker, Jahad Campbell. Georgia edge inside linebacker, Jalen Walker. Georgia safety Malachi Starks, who's on the board. Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant, who's on the board. Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden III, who's on the board. Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan, who's on the board. Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon, who's on the board. South Carolina safety Nick Gammon-Wari, who's on the board. Texas A&M edge Nick Scorton, who's on the board. Scorton is one of the youngest players, if not the youngest in this class, at 20.6 years old. That matters. Age matters a lot for Kwesi in the first round. His last 3 first-round picks, 21.25 years old. Approximation. I don't do the minutia of like the super details. I don't think that's important. Rounding to me is just fine here. Like they're all 21 and a quarter. So kind of looking at the board and what the Vikings need, I think, Dave, who is interested in trading down? Because I think we can trade down a few spots and get a guy that I think the Vikings would be interested in, who I think is talented.
The Titans.
Okay.
And who's the other one? New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans is what, 40?
40, and the Titans are 35. So
let's trade with
the second round.
So I don't want to trade with Tennessee because they don't have a 3rd round pick. Let's trade with New Orleans because I think we can make something interesting happen here. So with the New Orleans Saints, they have 2 3rd round picks, correct?
They have picks 40. That's the second round, obviously. 71 and 93.
Okay. What's their next 2 picks? Because it's hard for me to see.
112, 131.
So let's get 40, 73, and what is that? 130.
131.
5? 131. Let's do those 3 for 24 because I think that's doable. You might be able to get a little more. What's it say for likelihood of accepting?
91%.
Okay.
All right.
So let's take 131 off the board and let's move that up to that one, the
112.
4. So where are we at for accepting now? Yeah, let's do that.
Oh, 44% if we go with 93.
Okay, let's try it. Try it again. Because it lets you try it 5 times.
There we go.
We'll take the 4. That's fine. I think a 2, 3, and a 4 is a pretty fair price. So let's restart the draft. And I do think the difference between a player at 24 and the player at 40 is not that big of one. All right, so we got Demetrius Knight Jr. from South Carolina. Here, let's scroll down just a little bit.
Demetrius Knight, TJ Sanders, Jack Beck, Xavier Watts, Landon Jackson, Maxwell Hairston, Shavon Ravel, Princely Unum, Braden Swinson, Jaden Higgins, Cam Shadabo, JT
Tuimolao,
Carson Schwarzenegger, Quinton Judkins, Swessinger, Quinshawn Judkins. Well, there's a name I
So
recognize.
this kind of backfired a little bit. So I don't necessarily, I don't really love any of these guys, but we have a lot of picks. If I were to take somebody here, honestly, I might take Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. He's not the most high upside athlete, but I do think that he fits a lot of what the Vikings like. He's very smart, really good reactive skills. I think he's a really good 2nd round safety, which is not an insult at all. I think you can ask him to do a lot of the Cam Bynum stuff. So I would go Xavier Watts here. You get extra depth in the safety room. He can be a difference maker long term. And now I really like a lot of the guys on day 3, and we're going to really dive into them. CJ West, the defensive tackle from Indiana, has really risen up draft boards because people are starting to understand who he is. Shout out to one of my friends, Corey Kinnan, who's one of the best up-and-coming draft analysts out there. You'll want to go check out his Substack and podcast, Daft on Draft. He introduced me to CJ West a few months ago. Didn't really know much about him. Kent State transfer. Balled out really hard for the Hoosiers this past year. Has some real pass rush juice at 311 pounds. This dude is a really good player that can be a rotational guy now, and he can do multiple things for you. So at this spot, kind of looking at what's on the board, I would go CJ West and not feel too bad about it.
Even with his tiny arms?
Yeah, that's fine. Tiny arms for DT isn't that big of a deal because it can actually help you. Jim Schwartz likes defensive tackles with short arms because it helps you get into the chest really quick off the ball. It's different for edge rushers because with edge rushers, it's like the offensive tackle has a chance to pop up, get their arms out, and then you have to try to get in the chest. For defensive tackles, it's like you're using the dummies or whatever, but like where you just get up and push up. So there is some like merit to that. So I'm not too worried about a short arms. Plus in the third round, short arms, who cares?
CJ West.
First round, different question. All right, now we've got 93 and 97. This is exciting.
Tate Ratledge.
So, like Ratledge. I think this would be a good spot, Dave, to check out running back.
I'm just finding it interesting who they have stacked here.
Yeah. I don't necessarily love the PFF board, to be honest, but that's okay. You're not going to love every board. But let's take a look at corner. Or running back. I'm sorry, running back.
Martinez, Miami. Jaden Blue, Texas. Baishul, Tootin, HB, or Virginia Tech. That sounds like something I do in the bathroom. Brandon Smith, SMU. Jaden Krasky, Merritt, Arizona. Jaquez Hunter, Auburn. Kalel Mullings, Michigan.
So looking at this,
Etienne, Georgia.
I love ETN. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt's getting a lot of love. He missed time this year, I believe, due to an eligibility issue, which is really weird in today's NIL transfer portal era. But he's got a lot of juice, and I think he's going to be a top of day 3 pick. I like Damian Martinez. I think he plays at like 235, 240, but he can do wide zone, and he can do gap. He's got juice. He's got power. He's not Derrick Henry, but if you think of a guy who has like a profile where he can beat you with some speed and he's got power and like really good feet, Martinez kind of fits that general archetype, but he isn't Derrick Henry. Like he's a big dude that's nimble and he's got juice. That general persona, Martinez is that. So let's go with Martinez. I think this would be a really nice selection here. And yes, Travis Etienne is Trevor Etienne's brother, and they play very similar.
Northfield wants Arroyo out of Miami. All right. Draft Martinez. We're on the clock again. Ooh, there's a tight end.
See, that would be the guy I'd want to take because that's a high upside swing. Harold Fannin Jr. Absolute weapon this year for Bowling Green. He was the most productive receiver at the tight end position in the country, and he was elite. He was great. This would be the guy that I would want to, like, if I had to take an upside shot on tight end on day 3, this is the guy. And I'd be willing to take that shot here, especially because I already got a corner. I already got a safety. We got a defensive lineman. We got a running back. And I know I can get Quincy Riley at the 4-5 turn. So taking a guy like Fannin, I think it would be a really nice value here.
Is that age correct?
20?
20.6? Yeah.
And he's young.
He's still developing. He'll go up to easily 250, probably.
Yeah.
6'4", 230. That's skinny. Okay. Fanning. We're filling up the tight end room. Yay. Which
All
needs
right.
to be done
Now-
one way or the other.
Now comes an interesting spot. So we've got 2 picks left, 139 and 187.
Mm-hmm.
So 139, Dave, I want to take Quincy Riley. I'm going to take Quincy Riley in every single mock draft I do because Quincy Riley is that guy. I love him. And he is my favorite player in this class. I really think that he can be this next level type of player. Quincy Riley, cornerback, Louisville. Write it in ink.
Trying to remember why you like him so much.
He's got a little bit of everything, especially the ball skills.
What caused his stats to drop last year?
Ankle injury against Georgia Tech in week 4. Which, I mean, that's fine. All right, so this is going to be the spot where we're going to talk about Norris Fias' guy that he asked about. Go to wide receivers, Dave. Kymir DK from Florida. DK is a guy that I have been told that the Vikings do have some interest in. I believe that he would be a really good fit. And he's an interesting player. He was a transfer from Wisconsin. Never really a featured guy in the offense until there were a bunch of injuries for Florida. And they started using him like on deep overs and stuff. And he ran a sub 4.40. At the very least, I think this guy's a wide receiver 4 and a special teamer like Trent Sherfield for a decade. I do think he's really good, but I do think there's some receiver upside. I think he could end up being a good wide receiver 3 for you. And we know I've talked about the fact, hey, maybe the Vikings should think about wide receiver for 3 in the first round. But I think DK is a really good dart throw because at worst, you're getting a good special teamer. And this is the spot in the draft where you want to take good special teams type players. I think DK is that guy. So we're going to take Kymir DK. Just, you know what? People think of stars win Super Bowls. The back end of the draft wins Super Bowls. The role players, the special teamers, they win Super Bowls. And guys like DK are the reason why you win football games. Not sexy, but important.
Norris Fias says he's 7'11" across those middle. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Some decent grades.
I think this was a good draft.
Except for DK.
I mean,
overall, A-.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I don't care. Quincy Riley should be an A+ because that dude should go in round 2. I don't care.
Now, when
I feel
Darren and I were talking and building the visits list on, what did I just do? We were talking about, I had it ranked against NFL draft database.
Yep.
As to where they would go. But I found differences in PFF and in CBS. There are huge swings on where they have players. And it's partially because of the draft class, partially because I think PFF's quality's gone down. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. We got an A-. I'll take it. And we got a tight end. We're going to need 2 tight ends minimum. They'll roll at least with 4, if not more, in the camp. And they'll keep at least 3. And we've got 2.
Yeah. You're going to need the next Nick Muse, and however much you want, stock you want to put into a guy like Nick Muse. You want to have that developmental kind of player.
You want to develop for their next team. That's the only thing I worry about. But hey,
yeah,
if you can't grab one from somebody, draft him. Get him in the pipeline.
Yeah. They say that you're drafting a tight end for their next team, but you're taking this guy at the top, like the end of round 3, top of round 4. I'm okay taking that shot. I'm less comfortable taking it in round 1. Then you just look at TJ Hawkinson. He did nothing with the Lions. He's great with the Vikings. Like, that kind of stuff is real. So, but that's going to be our show. A little longer tonight. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us, having a good time. Don't forget to finish off the show by liking and commenting, hitting the subscribe button with that bell in the top corner for those notifications. And for those of you who stuck around, I'll be on Purple Daily tomorrow morning. So you want to check that out. It'll be a lot of fun. We're going to have a good time.
Hopefully Sal will be back from her trip for tomorrow night.
Where'd she go?
She went to some concert somewhere in Ohio.
Oh, did she go to Brand New?
Okay.
I'm asking old. A friend of mine, Brand New, they just got back together.
If that's her favorite band, yes.
It wouldn't shock me. Brand New had a really huge following. So, and I had a friend of mine at Voice of Wrestling, which if you love pro wrestling, go check out Voice of Wrestling. They talk ball better than anybody else in the business. They went to Brand New as well. So that's kind of why that's where my brain went. But thanks guys for joining. Don't forget, I'll be at the Purple Daily Draft Party for draft weekend. We will be going live after the first round of the draft at some point where once I get home. And then also we'll be live on days 2 and 3, potentially with some special guests. That part's not determined yet, but we will be live and we'll be having a great time. You will want to join us. It will be awesome. It will be better than last year. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!